And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first Propagandacast Lehr after the release of the Western Front armies. Yes, indeed, I've been a bit busy though, since again the release date was slightly changed and sort of other things been happening. So either way though, back to the Propagandacast Lehr, starting out here with the rear Echelon troops, the American most basic infantry unit in some regards, or be some guys with rifles, not necessarily the most powerful of rifles in the game. And of course, be making series about most of the units as all, sort of trying to scrape different things, tactics, strategies, all that. Of course, there's some kind of request. Specifically, people want to see this unit before others. Feel free to post, and of course, try to sort of keep up with that. Otherwise, though, hopefully you'll learn something with this, and hopefully also share it with other people. So, of course, get more viewers and subscribers as well. Though, of course, more people also learn and get better at the game, which is what at least I want, but hopefully everybody wants. So, the rear Echelon troops, or Echelon troops. Basic unit here of the Americans. They cost about 160 manpower. That's also essentially the cheapest unit in the game. They are cheaper than Ostrom, though not quite nearly as durable. And the M1 carbines give them to a certain extent, in some regards, a slight advantage up close, but overall they're not exactly direct combat troops, and this is actually looking a bit creepy. Obviously, one of this bit of oddities for securing points, but in terms of ability, they're also slightly different, say, than the other styles. Units there, the engineers and pioneers, they for example don't really build structures because the American base is already built. They have access to caches, barbed wire, tank traps, access to the fighting positions, which is sort of like a bunker in that regard. If they get into a fighting position, they get the unique ability of actually firing rifle grenades. So in that regard, the rear Echelon, whatever, possess some kind of unique ability in that regard. And even more unique ability is their volley fire ability, which allows them to basically just keep firing rapidly, suppressing enemy troops, and it's a reasonably effective ability, though again it costs 20 munitions for every round you do it in. But at the same time, it's an ability that initially can focus and give you the advantage. Say your rear Echelon troops encounter a Sturm Pioneer unit, then you suppress the bastards. Oh hey, you've actually won that engagement, for example. So in that regard, it can be a very nifty little ability, though don't necessarily expect you to win a war or a battle fully out, but it can give you a small tactical advantage here and there against your fascist opponent in the heat of battle. Though of course, at the same time, keep in mind, they're not going to be winning any ranged engagement versus any infantry, really. Fighting versus Volksgrenadiers or Grenadiers at long range, they will lose. That is going to be very much the case. Well, they'd be pretty much in trouble if they're caught out not without that. So that's something very much vital to keep in mind while using. There we go, we do see volley fire here popping up. Troops advancing. And troops suppressed. And of course remember, and even the next close up pin, and remember once troops are suppressed they do a lot less damage. So they of course still suddenly having a bit of an advantage, though again in this case they are nearby Grenadiers. And unlike an MG42, they can for example reasonably easily suppress a larger force. For example, it can be used to buy you time to get other troops up to support as well. Another thing to keep in mind with the rear Echelon troops is they actually gain more combat bonuses as an engineered unit, as assault will, than other infantry units. They don't have any veterancy abilities, for example, so first off they actually get more accurate. Second, veterancy rank though gives an extremely unique bonus, which is they actually get an increased squad size. They are the only unit in the game that gets a larger squad size as they veterancy up, so they actually become a 5-man squad as they hit veterancy 2. And then veterancy 3 actually gain further combat abilities, so they're not exactly the worst unit in the long run. If you can actually get some veterancy, they can be sort of useful. Though of course again, they're not going to take on a unit of Panzer Grenadiers or Obersoldaten known to necessarily pull off a victory that easily. There's still something vital to keep in mind. Another thing about them though, of course, is also something to keep in mind in terms of sort of things you can pull off with them, which you can't really with other units. For example, might have noticed they only have minesweepers. They don't, for example, have, say, flamethrowers. They don't have any other upgrades. But then again, you remember, we're playing against the Americans. So in that regard, compared to other armies, you can actually upgrade them with further weapons, You can pop a pair of BARs on them, and again, that way create a sort of BAR support team if you want. You can pop LMGs on them, create a sort of, light machine gun support team that way for your forces. Or you can easily create a anti-tank team, pop a pair of bazookas on them, and there we go. Probably the game's cheapest anti-tank infantry team. Since they're pretty cheap. Again, again, if they get a bit of veterans, they become even harder to kill because, again, they get a larger squad size. So in that regard, the rear echelon troops, also compared to the other units, do possess a lot more innate flexibility and can sort of be pulled off into a lot more duties than other units. So there are a lot of things there to keep in mind with the rear echelon. Really confuses me because people say it's pronounced this or that, but either way. So, something to keep in mind with them. Yes, they might not say, be Sturm pioneers or, German pioneers in some regards, but overall they are not complete and utterly hopeless either. You just require that you understand their strengths and their weaknesses, which are certainly initially not really strong in the combat front, but on the other hand, as things progress, they can actually become a lot more impressive, in particular upgrade them with the right weapons. And again, you can easily create something to say, handle enemy light vehicles, even enemy armor to a certain extent, thanks to the bazookas. So if you can understand the strengths and weaknesses of the rear echelon troops, I'm pretty confident that you'll find themselves to be reasonably solid troops in regards when it comes to supporting your other troops, and overall get something worthwhile out of them on the field of battle. So I think that sort of largely covers, well, more of the basic stuff with the rear echelon troops. Getting the most out of them, having the most fun with them, and making your opponent's life the most miserable. Though, of course, initially, again, they are weak. And again, as they get more veterancy, they become tough. And again, remember, the upgrades. They can really give them a lot more life as the game progresses compared to any other unit. So, with that out of the way, I will close this episode out with the Propagandacast Lehr. Say thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and also more importantly, I hope you learned something about the rear echelon troops. Hopefully you will get them more out of them after this, and lead yourself to new victories, or beat them up if you're playing against them. This is Imperial Dane saying cheers.